David Yeager, I believe he's a doctor, he's a PhD researcher. He was on the Andrew Huberman show several years ago, and Andrew was interviewing him, and his definition of mindset was this. It was, mindset is how we gather, filter, and decode the world around us. And I just thought about that and I said, that is so spot on. In our everyday terms, especially if you're in sales or maybe even in leadership, mindset is how you filter and decode what you hear, what you observe, and what you experience.
What happens when everything you've built is about to collapse and you decide there's no plan B? For Dan Lappin, founder of Lappin 180, that moment came 16 months into starting his business. No clients, no revenue, and 2 months of savings left. But instead of turning back, he chose conviction over fear, and it changed everything. In this episode, Dan unpacks how letting go of scarcity and embracing abundance unlocked the growth of his company, his philosophy, and his life. We explore how to sell without selling, lead with benevolence, and build conversation resilience when pressure hits hardest. Stay tuned. This story is a masterclass in detachment, discipline, and the quiet strength of choosing yourself. Dan, welcome to the One Away Show.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, Dan, I've gotten to know you a little bit through the years, and it's been pretty awesome, and I'm excited to get to know a little bit more about you. So what is the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
Yeah, this was a hard one for me. I think sometimes at least I do, right? We minimize a little bit of our moments and we think maybe they don't really matter or maybe they're not that big. And then at the same time, I always battle. I'm a private person, so I've taken many assessments over the years, and I always battle this privacy piece where I just kind of keep things close to the vest, kind of keep them tight. But I did think about it, and I think it was probably about 16 months into starting my business. So Lappin 180, I started it in 2007. And so I have a moment 16 months in that taught me a lot about myself and a lot about success, business, life, and you name it.
Yeah, I would love to hear about it. It sounds like you got started with the business, and you got maybe, I don't want to prescribe words for you, but take us to that 16-month moment. Like, what happened?
Well, getting into the business, I thought was a no-brainer. So, right, coaching, in particular, sales. And we actually, and I've always subscribed to this idea of stop selling. And then over the years, right, developed all this research and all this experience about how in order to actually sell, you do need to stop selling, because all the psychologies actually work against selling, if that makes any sense for the listeners. But I was 16 months in on it, and I thought it would be an easy transition. I'd always been in sales. I'd been successful as a sales rep. I think you could argue if I was successful as a sales manager or a director or VP or not. But that's a different story. But we're 16 months in, and I've got no revenue. I've got no clients. I remembered my twins were probably 3, 4, house, a mortgage, 2 car payments, utilities, food, still had to pay taxes, health insurance, you name it. And had gone through every last bit of savings, had gone through home equity, had gone through, I think at the time, maybe it was 40 or something percent of my 401k. And I still had to pay a penalty on top of that when I paid it back. And everything else. So literally probably down to about 2 months of finances. And I had no plan B. I remember at the time I came home on a Saturday, and my wife at the time um, was upstairs, and she was not in a good mood. She was actually crying. She was a little bit in a panic. I could feel the weight quickly, and she was in a panic, rightfully so, because we had a lot of responsibilities, and these two young twins were counting on us, and there was nothing past 60 days from a financial standpoint that said we were even going to put bread on the table. I think she was angry, and I can't blame her, right? Because she could vision not being able to pay the bills and not having money to pay for food, or what if something went wrong and the kids needed some kind of doctor and we had no insurance, right? For her, it was an easy escalation, and rightfully so, an easy escalation about all the things that could go wrong in the next 60 days. And so that was a really, really hard moment, because I did take it personally. And I really was already doubting myself to begin with. I was already questioning all my decisions, and why did I decide to do this after 16 months in? And could I even figure out, in the next 60 days, let alone I hadn't been able to figure it out in the 16 months prior, how to make this work. So I went for a run. It was a really long run. I remember it was really hot out too. And something just clicked in my head. Someone could call it complete irresponsibility. I would understand that if they did. Someone could call it complete stubbornness, right? Being blind, naive. You can just come up with any adjective you want at that point. I'd probably be guilty of all of them. But something just clicked in my head, and I'm like, nope, I'm not turning back. I do not want a plan B. I don't want to seek another job, go work for someone else again. I've got to make this happen. And so it was just like a weight was lifted off of me. I had already thought maybe I'd burnt the boats, right? But maybe in that moment, I truly did burn the boats, and just kind of had this attitude moving forward that, Dan, no one's coming to save you. You got to figure this out. So that was a pretty strong moment for me.
It sounds like there was you saw your wife in this panic, and then there was also this like peaceful acceptance as well, of like reality, and basically saying, okay, it's up to me. No one's going to just make this happy, make this easy for me. Once you maybe reckoned with the fact that, all right, I got to figure this out, what happened next?
It was a little bit like peacefulness in a weird way.
Yeah.
You're right, because I knew what I wanted, and I knew I did not want to turn back. And so I do think in some strange way, there was a peacefulness to that moment. But what happened next was, it was really about just going for broke in a way. I don't remember any specific conversation, but I do remember with the potential clients I was working with, they weren't clients yet, but there was a small group of them that were trying to decide whether to hire me to come in and coach their folks. I just remember in those conversations just feeling like, hey, you got nothing to lose at all here. If there's a question that you need to ask that's going to help this person make the decision, and they may make a decision not to choose or use you, you need to ask it. Go get clarity. Get clarity for them. Get clarity for yourself. And so I remember at that moment that it was like the gloves came off, or the handcuffs came off, whatever you want to call it. I was unchained. And just quickly after that, probably within the next 5 weeks, 2 clients came on board. And then at that moment, I was very lucky. It just kept building and building from there. There's a lot of things that go into it, but yeah, I think it was just realizing what am I holding back for? Even though you don't think you're holding back, I realized maybe I still was, and it was like, okay, let's just go.
Hmm. Interesting. You know, I the reason I said peaceful acceptance, not in the sense it was peaceful, but there was this maybe acceptance of like, all right, it's on me. I got to make it happen. And like you said, this is the path, and it kind of maybe we're maybe unattached to the path of it needing to happen, but saying this is the direction and there's no plan B. So, I mean, I can imagine the stress and pressure for sure. So I'm not undermining that, but it seems like you kind of channeled yourself to let things unfold the way they were supposed to. You said something when we first started about kind of realizing to sell well is to not sell in a sense. When you were in that moment of kind of desperation in many ways, like
Yeah.
walk me through the psychology of that, because every instinct and intuition I'm sure is like clamping down fear, like I got to sell to everyone. But it sounds like instead was letting things come to you naturally. Like talk us through the kind of the balance of that period and the kind of how that philosophy of yours took root.
I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. I think it comes from the philosophy of law of attraction, right? Which is whatever we put out in the world, we're going to receive. And up to that point, I was putting out scarcity and attachment into the world, right? I wanted to succeed so bad. I needed to succeed so bad. There was a lot of things counting on some flavor of success. Um, and I kept putting that out there. And whenever you put those things out there, you actually end up holding yourself back, right? Because you don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to do something that's too risky, right? You've got something that you think is very, very close to the finish line. So your mindset goes into this loss aversion mindset where you're like, don't do something to screw it up. You're this close. You're on the 1 yard line, whatever way you want to describe it, right? So you got to play cautious, right? It's gonna happen. And you go through that and it actually becomes risk averse, loss aversion based, which holds you back. And so, something in that moment for me, I had to remind myself, and it was through law of attraction that, you know, you got to go for it. There's this thing out there called abundance that we all hear. It's a massive buzzword now. It's way overused now, right? And it's all that. But the reality is, abundance is that it's there's plenty out there. It's something that you allow in your life. It's not something that you create. It's not something that you pursue. You literally just decide you're going to allow it. And so, what I started to do is I just started to take a mentality of, look, either they're going to say yes or no. Let's go for either one. Let's not wait. Let's not play it safe. There's no reason to play it safe. Let's do what's best for them, but let's help them make a decision. Is this something they need to do or not going to do? Versus the hoping, the don't mess it up. We're so close. What do I need to do to prove to them? It was no more of that. It was, let's help them get clarity. Because when they get clarity, I'll get clarity. I don't know if that's helping, but it was definitely more of a law of attraction where I realized you got to stop being so scarce, Dan. You've got to snap out of it. You got to, if you don't mind me saying, I got to get my crap together.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I feel like I need to send you a YouTube link I listen to every morning. Anyways, I can tell you more offline, but it's about kind of abundance and everything always working out, etc. And then there's a follow on it anyway. So the language you're speaking has been the language I've been listening to this year. So let me ask you then another question then. So I love your approach to abundance and kind of how you're thinking about it. Um, let's just say I'm a sales professional. I knock on your door and I say, Dan, oh, we have amazing product, great team, but I'm just, I'm barely making it and barely feeding my family, and it's a good opportunity. I'm just not doing it. And I come to you with fear, and I come to you with what's the solve? What's the like where do you start the conversation with somebody who's struggling to like figure out how to like put their bread on their own table, right? Through what they're selling.
Happens all the time. It's a great question. You said something that I hadn't said before in this conversation. It was fear, and it's weird, right? We fear losing something that we don't have. It makes no sense. So in my position that I was in the fear of losing something I didn't have anyways. And I think a lot of professionals do that. They have this fear of losing something they don't even have yet. But to answer your question, it really does come down to mindset. Again, another one of those words that's way overused, but I'll give a better definition of it. David Yeager, I believe he's a doctor, he's PhD researcher. He was on the Andrew Huberman show several years ago, and Andrew was interviewing him, and his definition of mindset was this. It was, mindset is how we gather, filter, and decode the world around us. And I just thought about that, and I said, that is so spot on. In our everyday terms, especially if you're in sales or maybe even in leadership, mindset is how you filter and decode what you hear, what you observe, and what you experience. And so the first thing I would try to help that sales professional with is, what mindset are they filtering the world around them? I mean, they cannot control the world around them, but what they can control is themselves. And more importantly, they can control the filter that they use to decode that world around them. And so that would be the first place I would absolutely want someone to start is, are they filtering the world through a lens of scarcity or attachment, right? Or low intent, what's in it for me? Or can they filter the world, say, through a lens of, right, high intent benevolence, which is what's in the best interest of this other person? I know I'm hurting. I know I don't have what I think I want, but how do I still do the right thing for this person, which is benevolence? You filter the world through the benevolent eye. Or do you filter the world through the abundant eye, which is, hey, this one meeting doesn't define me. This one moment's not going to define me, right? Abundance. Or detachment, which is you filter the world in a way that reminds you, don't label outcomes, not in the moment. Don't label things or assign value of things as good or bad that you hear or that you observe. And there's a whole psychology behind that. But that'd be the shift
Sure.
that I would want to help people through.
Awesome. Can we take it a level? So first, I think it's awesome, right? I've noticed in my most successful points in sales and things, of like, yeah, when you're kind of like letting go of the attachment and outcome, like the better things are. I think that's for all forms of life. Like it's life coaching in many ways applied to sales. It's beautiful. But I do have a question for you. If we can unpack this even further, these same people who might show up with fear, you walk them through to detach and let go and, choose how they see and decode the world in a more abundant way. And by the way, this isn't doubting how you do it, because I fully believe in what you do, but they might say to you, Dan, this is a deeply rooted pattern. This is like my childhood trauma has caused me to show up this way. I've done this for the last 10 years. So how do you expect me to change behavior like that? Or I've noticed this is the same way in all these other areas in my life. And like, okay, now you're just telling me a different way to live. Like what's the response when someone shows up at the door and says, this is great information and all, but like, this is just true to who I am. Like, I'm just like kind of curious, like the emotional side to this paired with the, like, let's say more cognitive behavioral side to this.
Being able to shift how we think about something, right? How we filter it really comes down to one moment at a time. That's the starting point. And no one's going to be perfect at it. There are still scenarios, Brian, and meetings that I need to write out my mindset thought process because I know that I might be walking into a meeting that has a little extra pressure, or I might be walking into a conversation that might have a little extra juice or intensity behind it, right? And so it's a journey, but it does all start with us trying to be more self-aware in the moment. I'll give you an example. We as human beings do a really good job of feeling. In fact, we feel first. And right, you ever been in a meeting, Brian, where the conversation's rolling and you're listening, but something is said that causes you to feel maybe a little anxious, a little hesitant, maybe even agitated or frustrated? Have you ever been in a conversation where that's happened?
Yeah, like right now, you're telling me to change how I think about how I live. So all those adjectives apply. No, I'm kidding. But yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Go ahead.
So we all know that and we all feel it. So anybody who's listening right now knows that too. They know if they're in a meeting with their spouse or significant other conversation, excuse me, or if they know if they're in a conversation with one of their kids or a conversation with a teammate at work or a client or a prospect, right? Everybody knows when they start to feel hesitant, anxious, agitated, or frustrated or disappointed. We do. And it feels like a weight. But not only does it feel like a weight, it tells us something. It tells us that we just filtered something in that conversation through that lens of scarcity, attachment, or low intent. It tells us right there where our mindset is. That's why we feel that negative feeling. And so what's great is we all have this capacity to catch it. And in that moment that we catch it, we have that ability to remind ourselves, hold on a second. Let's be careful here. What did we label something bad? What did we do? Let's not do that at this moment. Let's stay in the game. Let's stay in the moment. Because whatever it was, it doesn't mean anything yet. Let's keep moving. So that is something every single one of us, without going through years and years of psychology or years and years of training and coaching, we all have that ability if we just keep it simple to work on it and we identify those moments where we feel that hesitancy and that anxiety. We can pull back with when we slow down and we can ask ourselves, okay, how'd we just filter what we heard? I don't know if that helps, but it's not that hard of a starting point. Now, there's no immediate gratification necessarily, so right, it's something you got to work on, but it doesn't take long to get a rhythm in it.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something to this, I know, the more successful people I've met, maybe in business, it's interesting, right? They all have very similar problems or a slew of problems, but their response to those problems and how they show up. And, I have a mentor, he says, you kind of got to have like hot girl mentality all the time. And he's like, that doesn't mean that like things aren't bad and tough, but from the perspective of like, it's going to be all right. And you're going to make it happen. People want you and X, Y, Z. And it's like, even if that's not the case, or like another example to your point is like, even if you're driving a beat up Honda, the perception you're driving a BMW, and that's not like you're lying, etc. But it's that belief that like more is coming. And I think you're saying similar things. Like when you are at your lowest low, and your wife was on, the floor crying, and how are we going to have, 6 weeks of, X to pay for, kids and house, and you still went out there with the mentality, it sounds like, or learn to embrace that mentality in the moment of it's all going to happen for you and come together. And I think what I'm hearing you say now is, okay, when you're working with individuals, we need to shift without even going into thousands of years of psychology. We need to help people shift just how they think and interpret situations, because that's going to lead to a world of difference.
I mean, as you're talking, and I could use this as an example. So I have 4 children. So 2 in particular in this example stick out. One child will, when something goes wrong, they will dwell on it. And then they will say things like, why does this always happen to me? And they don't do it on purpose. It's just their inner dialogue. Why does this keep happening to me? What have I done wrong? Right? They're always looking at that negative and they're focusing on what's not right. And what I find is I watch them, they attract more of it, which frustrates them even more, which I understand, but sometimes hard. But then I have another who doesn't mean that they don't feel the negativity, but they have a little bit more, I think, resolve or resilience, and they get through it faster. And so what happens is better things happen to them. And then ironically, what I see happening is the one child who's got all the talent in the world, all the capability in the world, who focuses on, this hasn't gone right for me, this didn't go right for me. Then they see their sibling where things are going right. And then it kind of spins them even tighter, because then they get frustrated that their sibling is having these successes. And then they feel even more negativity. So it's a perpetual cycle that we can get in sometimes if we're not careful.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think to that point, essentially you have the cases of 2 scenarios. One where positive thoughts perpetuate positive thoughts.
Which we all know, right? We all know that.
But I think what's interesting is, okay, you put 2 people in the same environment who go in 2 different directions. One gets weighed down lower by a negative thought process, and the other one kind of raises up higher by their own thought process. And you can almost see the scenarios playing out side by side.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to role play with ChatGPT after this, and then kind of take what you said and, kind of play the situation out. I feel like we get some good examples, maybe some good content that you can share in the future of how the story ends. I'm looking forward to it, Dan. Sorry,
yeah, me too.
My creative mind goes a lot of places. If you're a founder looking to grow without raising capital or giving up control, Relent is built for you. Founded by entrepreneurs who've scaled without outside funding, Relent helps companies find and retain talent, lower operational costs, and reinvest in growth. We've hired nearly 10 team members through Relent and streamlined our entire cost structure, freeing up capital to put toward what matters most. Even small teams can set up offshore operations quickly, compliantly, and without heavy infrastructure. With deep expertise in the India-US corridor, Relent combines cultural fluency with operational rigor and guides everything from team design to long-term scaling. Grow on your terms and start with Relent. To learn more, visit relent.team/arcbound. So Dan, talk to me about, take us back to that moment. Your wife on your last weeks of savings, 2 kids. How did things start to turn? Like walk me through the moment you landed a few clients, and then little by little you gradually were able to help someone else in that situation kind of learn through your own experiences. What started to happen? What are the activities that you started to do and put yourself into, and to ultimately get yourself to a place where your wife was celebrating you because you just turned around something that looked like horror right at the beginning?
There are some things that I did and I still do to this day. And I don't know where I picked it up. And I am sure it was a book, because I read everything. You name it, I was reading it. If it had anything to do with psychology, anything to do with performance, anything to do with self-talk, anything to do with any of that, I read it. And I know one of the things that I picked up somewhere was this idea of neutrality. Let's not get too high on the highs, but let's not get too lows on the lows. And I definitely think I was someone up to that point who was prone to the highs and the lows, where I could get really, really, really down on myself about, why didn't that deal come through? Didn't that person like me? What did I do wrong? What could I have done different? Is there any way I could save it? I would absolutely take myself to task on the downs, right? When I didn't get a deal, it was unrelenting for me. And then when I did get one, I actually wouldn't even celebrate that much. So maybe the highs weren't that high. Maybe for me, because of some psychology, it was always the lows. But I just started to think about things in a more neutral fashion. If I got negative news, I said, okay, there's some negative news. Got it. That means I'm closer to some positive news. And I started taking that mentality. And instead of beating myself up, I said, okay, here's the learning. And I would make sure I codified the learning. And I would be like, okay, but we got to keep moving. So that was one thing. And I still do it to this day. And I talk to all our clients about it. And that is, right, let's not get too high, but let's not get too low. It doesn't mean we can't celebrate, but let's try to stay in that even keel spot. You know, it's like anything else. Like in football is the best example, right? It's a little cliche, but wide receiver or whatever gets the touchdown and does this ridiculous dance. All right, that's pretty high. You know, or the wide receiver, right? They drop the ball, right? And then they fall to the ground and bury their head. That's a little low. Or there's the wide receiver who catches the touchdown, walks calmly out of the end zone, or the wide receiver who misses the touchdown, walks calmly out of the end zone, right? I think that's a big component. And then the other component is paying attention to what you put your mind on, which is, again, it's going to sound cliche, scarcity or abundance. So I've always done gratitude journals. And sometimes it's writing for 30 seconds every morning, just 5 or 6 things that I'm grateful for. But I always focus on the smallest things. I'll put the bigger things in there, but I focus on the small things. And I've always done that because it's very, very true. Whatever we focus on, we are going to create more of it in the world. All right. There's a pretty interesting book called Stop the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joseph Dispenza. He actually goes into the science and the anatomy of why that happens and the physics of why that happens. But it's just true. You got to make sure you're staying aware of where are you putting your focus? Are you putting your focus on all the crap that hasn't gone right or the crap that is going right, stuff that is going right? And here's the big difference. Everybody has failures. Everybody has crap stuff, negative things in their life. Everybody. But the successful folks learn to gravitate toward what is good in their life, even if it's small, where unfortunately those who get stuck, right, or in a rut, they just continue to focus on the negative that's not going right. Because everybody has stuff in their life that doesn't go right. It's just really where you're putting your focus.
Mm-hmm. So, it's interesting. It's simple in practice, super hard to do. And simple in theory, but also very hard to do in practice. Yet some people are much better in practice than others at doing it. Okay, I have a question for you. So I walk into the Lappin household and your wife's there and you're not in the room because you're, closing deals with an unattached mindset.
Doing something.
Yeah. And I say, Dana, because I met Dana, your wife, she's a wonderful woman. I'm sure she kicks your butt in golf as well. And so I say, Dana, what's Dan's mindset neutrality score on a scale 1 to 10? 10 is like the highs don't get high and the lows don't get too low. Like his neutrality score is like he's even keel all the time. Like that's a 10. What does she give you?
That's a great question. And it will depend on the theme in my life. So if you're talking business, that theme in my life, and 10 is a great score on neutrality. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
She'll probably put me in 8. But if you ask her about our kids, right? And the life that our kids are creating and experiencing for themselves or our family, she'll probably put my score more out of 4.
Even that, you're a 6. That's good.
I definitely do feel, and I have to work harder at it as a dad and as a husband, I definitely feel a lot more attachments to the well-being of my family, right? Where you try to give your kids the wisdom that you have, but innately, and who could blame them? We were all the same. They don't really listen, right? They're going to do their own thing. They're going to learn their own lessons. And so, but I do as a dad, I feel much more attachment toward that, much more of the highs and the lows on that than I do on business.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I appreciate the vulnerability there. I didn't know you were going to take me 6 layers deep, but I felt like I was in the Lappin household hearing that answer. And now you're making me question if I want to spend more time in the Lappin household. So no, I think that's super. I think that's really insightful because you're right. I think as kids, I think about my own parents. There's definitely one parent that I would listen to for hours and like take all the wisdom. And there's another parent that, you know, I know they have an amazing intention, but half the time I want to hear them and half the time I don't. And it might just be, you know, us men don't always know how to communicate the way our, younger kids want to hear it. But anyways, I got some empathy for him, but no, we're very close. But I think he means very well. But I can appreciate your point of view as well. Wanting more for your kids at like a personal level. You created these children. They're a representation of you in the world. So I think that's only natural. But
I think as parents we have this, right? So I didn't come from much. So we always feel this pressure, at least as a father, that we want our kids to experience more and better. Our kids have never asked for that, but for some reason, as a dad, I feel like we have that innateness where we do. And so we tend to get more attached and more passionate about our kids experiencing more or better.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I can also, when I think of my dad, he grew up with nothing. And I think, it's like they work so hard for us. And when you don't see your kids maybe on the path you'd like to see them on, you're going to care.
You are. It is care.
Yeah, it is care. Yes. You're a caring person. Very interesting. So Dan, I know we got 5 minutes left. We've touched on mindset. We've touched on the Lappin household. We've touched on the very deep moment in your marriage. You've kind of given us the kitchen sink here in a short amount of time. Thank you. We got 5 minutes left. You've built a pretty amazing coaching business working with a lot of sales leaders. Give us the 5-minute spiel or the 2-minute spiel, and we can build upon of what you're doing today, who you're working with, and how you're kind of bringing everything we've discussed into your day-to-day EAT neutrality score. Like, I want to unpack it for us so we can get a day by day in the life of Dan.
I'm horrible at this. I really am. I do not have a elevator pitch.
It's okay. Natural conversation.
Or anything like that. I would say this, that we teach conversation resilience. That's really a strong way to articulate it. And what does that mean? Well, we all know in business, we feel pressure. If we're a leader, we're feeling pressure in our conversations to try to have a positive influence on those that we mentor or those that we employ, whatever the terminology is that you want to use. We have to give good feedback. We have to give negative feedback or constructive feedback. But there's always that conversation resilience there. And in sales, it's the same. We feel pressure, right? And part of that, our approach is, it's not about making the sale. It's about helping the other human being decide if they want to make a change. For most of our clients, in order for our clients to get hired, someone's got to get fired. And if for someone get fired, that decision maker has to decide that change has merit, change is relevant. So it's not about selling, it's about helping that human being debate as objectively as possible the risks or the gains of making that change. And what does that look like? Even in leadership, it's the same way, right? If you're a leader and you're mentoring, you're coaching, or you're trying to develop someone on your team, you're in the same boat. Your boat is trying to help that other person decide if they should make a change, if they should improve, if they should make some kind of behavioral skill or whatever adaptation. That's what we do. So we try to take the sale out of it because so much about sales actually deteriorates trust. And we try to make the conversation much more focused on, do you need help? If you need help, what are the obstacles that you're going to face in getting that help? And once you work through those obstacles and possibly getting that help, who is the right fit to help you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish? So again, that's the philosophy that we take with our clients, and we try to help them embrace that philosophy in their conversations with their prospects or with their teammates.
Yeah. Interesting. I love what you said about, for you to get hired, someone needs to get fired. That's really like poignant. Perhaps that's your scenario, and that's the scenario for the people you're working with. And also, it's the sale isn't about the transaction, but leading someone to determine for themselves if they want to make a change. And whether, like, in the sales process, I think what you're also saying is, like, you're helping someone either way, if they want to go with you or not, because you're bringing them more clarity into what they already have, or what could be better if they go in a different direction. So as a sales professional, like, regardless of the outcome, if you've done your job, the person's going to walk away better than they came to you.
Exactly. And right, none of us like to be told what to do.
Not even your kids. That's right. That's right.
As human beings, we all do this. And it's funny. And I know I do this, right? We overestimate what we do, how we do it, and or who we do it with. We do. And we underestimate at the same exact time what we could actually gain by doing something different. So it's very interesting, the psychologies that go into a human being actually making a decision that they're going to go a different path, do something different.
Dan, I want to be respectful of the time here. I got sharp orders from your team to let you get ready for your next meetings, but I think we've covered a ton of ground in 45 minutes. I got to say, this has been a really nice interview. Where can people find Lappin 180, reach out, get to know you, all the things?
Best way to get to know us would actually go to our podcast, Breaking Sales. And we chose the title for a reason several years ago, because it is about disrupting sales. It's about getting away from selling. So that's an easy way to get a feel for our philosophies. And as you know, we take a very deliberate and open approach. We don't hide things. We don't do any of that tease stuff. We get into the content directly. They can go to Lappin 180, or they can connect with me on LinkedIn. Either way.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Dan, we'll send listeners that way as well, from podcast to podcast. And keep up the great work. Keep helping people, serving the world as you do, and looking forward to continuing to follow the journey.
Brian, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. A little vulnerable for me, a little bit beyond the privateness for me, but I think I got through it.
I was very intrusive putting myself in the Lappin household. I realized I took that a few layers in, but you also opened the door for me, with talking to me about, your wife crying. So I figured that was appropriate, but I might have stretched it. I understand. I apologize. Dan, thanks so much. Today's conversation reminded us that breakthroughs, they come from commitment when you decide there's no plan B and step fully into belief. Dan Lappin showed us that sales, leadership, and even parenting come down to one thing: how you filter the world. Fear constricts, clarity expands, neutrality keeps you grounded. From scarcity to abundance, his story is proof that when you stop chasing outcomes and start serving with intent, everything changes. You can connect with Dan and his team at lappin180.com or tune to their podcast, Breaking Sales. New episodes of The One Away Show release every Tuesday and Friday. Stay curious, stay generous, and keep choosing your own path forward.